Hello, I'm Melanie Franklin. I'm really pleased to be doing this short video all about how to answer exam questions. I did a video about 10 years ago, I think now, on YouTube because lots of people Google the statement, how do I answer multiple choice exam questions? I'm obviously going to go further because I'm not just going to look at multiple choice, but I'm going to look at all the types of questions that APMG International use for their foundation and their practitioner level certifications. I'm the Chief Examiner for the Agile Change Agent qualification. I've also supported the Chief Examiner in looking over the quality of the exam questions for the Foundation and Practitioner of the Change Management qualifications from APMG International. So I've been doing this a very long time. I've got lots of experience, not only on the examiner side, but also on the training side. And I wanted to make sure that you've got lots of information about how to answer exam questions, because that's not really what we're testing. What we're testing is your knowledge, your understanding of the subject. And we want to make sure that you feel confident that you can take the exam. So I think just having a quick look at this video and seeing how do I answer the questions will really build your confidence. I've included lots of slides with lots of guidance, and I've taken pictures from some of the sample exam papers to illustrate each of my points. So it'll be a really useful reference document that you can watch as many times as you need to as you're getting ready for your exams. I hope you find it useful. This session is designed to help you understand how exam questions are put together and how to answer exam questions. The foundation level qualification, which I'm going to deal with first, is based on a simple multiple choice exam style, and the practitioner level that I'm going to deal with second has more objective based testing. In other words, lots of different styles of questions. This will all make sense as I go through, but I just wanted you to understand that there's the first chunk, which is just the foundation level. So if that's what you're doing, concentrate on that. If you're sitting both types of exam, you'll want to watch the whole thing. So let's get started. So foundation level certificates. I thought I'd start with a bit of revision technique. On any course that you go on, you're going to be given access to at least one sample paper, if not two. And you want to use those sample papers to become familiar with the types of question during your pre-course preparation. Now, what you're going to get is you'll get an answer key with each sample paper. There's an example of this on the right-hand side of the slide. And what the answer key will do is it will provide you with the page numbers for whichever text you've been given that you can go and look up the information if you got the question wrong. I've used the APMG International's Change Management Foundation and Practitioner as an example for this set of slides, because I wanted to take copies of content from sample papers so I could really demonstrate what's going on. So on the right, you can see that we've got an answer key. And in fact, what we've got there is just explaining that there are sort of, first of all, where's the reference in the book? So sometimes it isn't a page number, sometimes it's an actual reference. So here, for example, ECMH stands for the Effective Change Manager's Handbook, because that's the text on which your course and your certificate has been based. And then you've got the sections in the book where you can find the right answers. You can also see that what happens is that every exam has a syllabus, and each section of the syllabus has been coded. So in this particular case, for this exam, they've got 4 subjects that are going to be examined, which is around change in the individual, change in the organisation, and then communication, stakeholder engagement, and change management practice, each of which comes with a code, CI, CO, CS, or CP. So again, that gives you some orientation about what on earth is the subject of the question, why am I getting it wrong? One of the things you want to be doing if you're taking the foundation exam is it's your own time management. If you've got 50 questions over 40 minutes, which is the standard for APMG International, you get some extra time if you have a condition that warrants it. Perhaps the language of the exam is your second language, or you have dyslexia, for example. But whatever the timing that you have for the exam, always at least divide it into 2. So that you've got a sense check. Think, well, okay, I've got 40 minutes for this exam. So 20 minutes in, think, am I halfway through? Because if you're not, it's a good example of how you need to pick up the pace. And one of the things you want to be doing is you want to be building up your competency and your confidence with doing these exams. So use the sample papers to practice as many times as you like, because what you want to get familiar with is, how do I take these exams in the time allowed? So practice really does make perfect. Now let's have a quick look at how to answer foundation level questions. So what they're going to be is a multiple choice paper. So there's always going to be one question with 4 potential answers, A, B, C, or D. Now, the key thing to remember is that each answer gains you a point. And if the pass mark, for example, is 50%, you'll have to get 25 answers correct out of the available 50. There's no negative marking, so if you get something wrong, you don't lose a mark. So it's really a simple progression through. Every single one that you get right, that's a right answer. There's no grades of passes, so just focus on getting things right. Don't get stressed about whether or not you've got every single question right. To be honest, I've been doing this so long and I've never seen anybody get 50 out of 50. Multiple choice questions are, by their nature, open to interpretation, which we're going to look at in the next bit. And I think you just need to stay calm and go, I could get a very large proportion of these correct, but I don't want the perfectionists amongst you to get really stressed about whether or not you're getting 49 or 50 out of 50. So the key thing is you concentrate on getting that pass. Now, what you want to be doing, whether it's a paper exam or online, the key thing is time management, and you don't linger on questions. Once you've answered the question, move on to the next question. Even if there's a voice in the back of your head going, I'm not sure if I've got the answer right. Don't worry about it. You've answered it to the best of your ability at that moment in time, then move on. There's nothing else that you can do. Don't change your mind, particularly those of you who've perhaps finished the exam early and think, oh, I've got 7 minutes left. Let me go back over all my answers. Now, don't do that. The thing is that the problem that we have with a lot of this is that perhaps if you've got an idea of sort of what you thought it should be, and then you're starting to doubt yourself, you go back and change it. There's a very good chance you're going to be changing from a right answer to a wrong answer. And to be honest, under that amount of time pressure, do you really want to be changing your answers at that point? Yeah, I'm not sure you do your best work at that moment. The only reason for changing your answer is if you've come across a later question that perhaps has some new insight for you. You go, oh, that's what they meant. And then there was an earlier question on the same subject where suddenly you've had that moment. Now, that's a good reason for going back and changing your earlier answer, because you found something that's really confirmed something that was niggling in the back of your mind. But if it's just, oh, I'm not sure, A or C, oh, I said A, maybe I should change it to C, don't play that game. When you're done, move on. The exam is finished. So let's look at the question types. So there are a variety of question styles used in multiple choice exams. As examiners, we are trying to mix it up because we're trying to give lots of different variations on the question, so that if one particular question type doesn't resonate with somebody, it doesn't fit their learning style, then they still have an equal chance of being successful in the exam, because there are lots of different question types. So that's why we do it. The straightforward question, where there's just a question and you think, well, I've got to answer this. The thing is, you've got to hone in on what is the key word. What is it that they're asking for? You know, if they're asking for a particular term or a definition, or what's in the content of a document, or what's the responsibility for a role, really hone in on document or role or term that they've actually quoted, because that's where you'll find the right answer. Take time over the question, because that's where the keyword sits. That's what you want your brain to be thinking about. And once your brain has started thinking about that, it might only be a couple of nanoseconds ahead. But then when you start to look at the answers, what you're going to find is that that is much easier to jump out at you. So you can actually sort of have a look and start to think about what's going on. Best and most questions, the word best and the word most will be in block capitals in bold, so that they jump out at you. And really, this is something for examiners, in that what we're doing is we're just sort of just caveating the question, if you like, just making you see that There could be a number of different answers to the question we've asked. What we really want is for you to give us the answer that most closely matches what you learnt on your course, which of course comes from the textbook that was provided to you for your course material. So if I was asking about the responsibilities of a particular role, well, to be honest, that could be wide, couldn't it? It depends on within your own organisation. If you said the role of change manager, you might have a very different interpretation to another company. What we're actually asking for is what are one of the responsibilities that has been quoted in the textbook that you've actually been taught. So best or most means there might be other answers in the selection that you think, well, that's reasonable, that's fine, but that's not the one you want to go for. You want to go for the one that you think, oh, I remember my trainer saying that, or, oh, I know I've read that somewhere in the book. So that's what you want to be looking for. Not questions, a bit like best and most, are also going to be in block capitals in bold text. And the key thing is to think about how our brains work. Our brains like to match what's right. So what you're going to do is find yourself walking through the answers and your brain's going, that's right, that's right, that's right. And what you need to look for is the thing that jumps out at you as that doesn't belong. So you're looking for the outlier, and that way you find the right answer. So it's always about focusing on what doesn't fit, what isn't quite right here. So have a look at the question, think about the keyword, think about the subject. So in this example, I've given you the 3 ingredients of intrinsic motivation. So clearly the right answers are purpose, autonomy and mastery. So you want to look for the answer that isn't one of those 3. That's the one that jumps out at you. With the missing word questions, I think the key thing is you have to read the whole question yourself and try to work out what you think the statement would be. So you quickly read the question to firstly identify what's the subject, what's it really talking about? And then what you want to do is you want to go back and go, right, okay, what would be the key word? Now, this might be a definition. This might be an explanation of something. So try to have an idea before you look at the 4 options so that you don't get swayed potentially by something that isn't quite right. So then just try out the one that you think it really jumps out at you as that's right, and just see if it actually flows. And that's how you pick the answer for that one. And then finally, what we have is questions which have true, false statements. There will be 2 statements, so they do take a little bit longer to read. But the key thing you've got to think about with those statements is that you have to read the statement, just like you would with a true, false question. Just read the question, look for the key things that it's saying, look for the subject that it's, what specific subject is it addressing? Is it a definition? Is it a description of a role? Is it the description of the contents of a document? Is it stating when something happens or before something else after this? So is there a sort of life cycle style to the question? Read it through, and what you want to be asking yourself is, have I read this somewhere? Did my trainer say something like this? Have I seen this on one of the slides perhaps, or on one of the screens when I was taking the course? And the other thing you want to be looking for, which I think is the real trick, is make sure that you've read the whole statement. And remember that you might read the first part of the statement and go, oh yes, that's true, I remember hearing that. But make sure you read right to the end, because there might be, after a comma, for example, a second part of the sentence where actually there's a bit of a poison pill where you go, oh no, that's not right. And then you'll know actually it's a false statement because the first part might be right, but the rest of it isn't. Now what I'm going to do is go on and give you some help with the longer style exams, which are the practitioner exams. So very similarly to the foundation, if you get a sample paper, you want to be using that to become familiar with the exam questions. Now, it's going to be a longer exam, the practitioner, and it's going to cover different subjects from your course. Now, in the change management practitioner, for example, it's 2.5 hours, and there are 4 parts to the syllabus that are going to be examined. Question 1, 2, 3, and 4, although each of those questions is then going to be subdivided into separate parts. The key thing for you is to look at the 2.5 hours and divide the time up so that you've got some kind of structure to which you're working. So in this case, with 2.5 hours, it doesn't exactly divide equally. It's 37.5 minutes. And I don't think anybody ever times anything they do to the half a minute. So what I've suggested is that you give yourself a few more minutes at the first section, particularly if on a practitioner exam there's a scenario that you need to use. We'll look at that in just a moment. And give yourself a last few minutes in the last section, because then at least you can sort of finish up and get yourself organised and go, no, I'm definitely finished. And you want to be using these timings as your own guardrails for making sure you don't fall off the timings and you don't spend so long on question 1, for example, you're going to have to race through the rest of the paper. Now, if you've got a sample paper, use the marking scheme. Now, I've given the example in the top right here of the marking scheme from the Change Management Practitioner paper, so you can work out what the answers should be. So self-mark to see how you did. And because it's a practitioner style question, what you'll find is it's got something we call a rationale, which explains which is the correct answer and gives you the page reference, but also explains why the other answers are not correct, and also refers you to pages in the text if that's relevant. So you want to be using that text to go back and reread perhaps the textbook, or go back and look at the relevant slides from your course just to understand, that's why I got it wrong. So that's what you want to be doing with your practitioner paper. Now, as I mentioned, there's often a scenario, might be 1 or 2 or even sometimes 3 pages long. It's going to be describing an organisation, and it's going to be describing a situation. And it will contain not just that description, but it will also contain some specific extra information, some additional attachments that are relevant for specific questions. Perhaps the attachment is relevant for question 1E or for 2C. So don't look at those attachments and all the extra information until you get to the part of the exam that actually needs you to read that attachment. So don't worry about it. What you want to be doing with the actual scenario is looking at it in a very structured way, making sure that there's 3 or 4 key questions that you answer when you're reading, because with several pages of text, you can wander sometimes and your brain doesn't take everything in. But if you've got a few questions that you're directly looking for the answer for, it's active reading, if you like, and you're going to be finding those answers so that the words don't blur around you. So have a think about the things that are relevant for the subject that you're taking and look for the information. So I've given you some examples here about if I were answering a question about change management, some of the information I would be looking for in the scenario. You don't want to be treating the scenario as a case study. In other words, you don't want to be digging into so much detail. You don't want to be theorizing about how it might work, what are all the potential options. Take the information at face value. It's just a scenario. It's just a situation. It's just something that will give a little bit of a flavor for the exams, the actual questions themselves that will make a little bit of sense. But it is not a case study where you are supposed to take the situation and work out how it could be better run. Don't dive into it too deep. And that's why you only want to be giving yourselves just a few minutes to read the scenario and really pull out some of the key information. Don't overdo it. Otherwise, you'll have no time left for the questions later on. Now, I'm going to go through practitioner style question types. Now, we've just looked at the foundation level exam where we have simple multiple choice. Simple, by the way, doesn't mean that the question is simple to answer. It means the structure is it's just got one question and it might have 3 or 4 answers that you can choose from. I've given you an example on the screen here, one with just 3 that you have to pick one from. So you want to look for the key words in the question. What is the question talking about? What is the subject? And then go and look through the potential answers for something that resonates, that is relevant to that particular subject, that is doing things in the right way or contains the right information or is using the right people. That's what you'll be looking for in that question. I call these the no, no, yes, yes questions, because what they do is they'll give you some kind of information and they'll ask you, do you think this is correct based on everything that you've learned in your course and everything that you've read up in the manual? So do you think that the answer is correct? And what you want to do is you want to be thinking through the situation you've read, think through the question, and you have to make your own mind up. Is this right or isn't it? And if the answer is yes, then what you're going to focus on is just the 2 answers that are yes. So in this example, you can see C and D are both yes, and you're going to decide between one or other of those. If you think the answer is no, then you'd be looking at A or B. But you don't have to look at all 4 answers. You have to answer the question first, and then you have to focus in on which of those 2 is actually right. So there's several sort of stages to answering this question, if you like. First, read the subject, think about what the keywords are, think about what it's stating, and think, do I agree with this based on everything I've learned on my course so far? And then you pick the right answer. Multiple option, multiple choice tends to really upset people because it feels overwhelming. What you've got is you've got a question and you have to pick 2 answers, not just one. And you only get the mark if you pick both of the correct answers. Now, the key thing to focus on here is that what you're looking for is you're looking for the keywords. You're looking for the strongest possible answers. You're going to have to read each of them quite carefully, and you're going to have to see the whole sentence, whether or not each of the potential answers is completely true. So do read the whole thing through, a bit like the true false statements. You know, make sure you've read everything, make sure you agree with it. And what you're looking for is you tend to come out with sort of 3 answers that you think, there's one that's probably nonsensical, there's one that probably is correct, but it belongs to a completely different subject. And then you're left with 3, and you've got to sort of choose between those 3, and you get very stressed by that. What you want to be doing is then comparing those 3 against each other and just see how tight the wording is, if you like, how factually correct the wording is in each of those 3. And what you'll find is one of them is a little bit less specific, a little bit woollier than the others. And you'll go, it's the 2 that are more factually correct. Those are the ones that I want to go for. Those are clearer, they are stronger. Yes, I get that now. And that's what you're looking for. So that's how you find the 2. So you want to label in your mind, if you like, as you go through each of those 5 answers, whether or not the statement is, possibly that's true, I think that could be right, or that's completely nonsensical, that's completely wrong, that goes against everything I've learned, so get rid of that one out of your head. And then finally, there'll be one where you think, I'm not sure that that's a possibility, and you'll probably end up, as I said, with 3, and then you go back and read those 3 again, and when you compare and contrast those, you can often find that the less specific one is the one you can discard. So that's what you want to be doing with those questions. Matching questions are lovely. I love a matching question because, to be honest, what you're looking for is on the right hand side on column 2 is the subject that you, in this case, it happens to be the stages of team formation by Tuckman. And so you have a look and you go, all right, those are each of the 5 sort of steps in team formation. So I get that. So you think, I understand. And then what you're looking for is you're looking to see in column 1, when you read the statement, is that statement talking about the beginnings of team formation or the end when the team is starting to disband or anything in between? So what you want to be doing is you want to be reading the statement in column 1 and thinking, what specific aspect of the subject does this match to? So you are looking for keywords. Now I'm going to give you an example here. So, for example, if we're talking about team formation, in the first column, question 1, it says the management structure review team seem to be disagreeing rather than making any progress. Disagreeing, that's a keyword. I know that is part of the definition of storming. So you look for the keyword. Waiting in question 2, waiting for the project manager to give them instructions. We know waiting is one of the definitions about passivity that relates to forming a team. So you know waiting, that means forming. So you're looking always for the keywords in matching questions. And you can go through them quite quickly, which is great when you've got other questions that take a little bit more time. So don't be sort of beating yourself up if you think, I answered that really quite quickly. It's fine, because with matching questions, if you get really good at them, you get very good at looking for the keyword associated with one of the answers in column 2, and that's how you get the question done. And finally, this is a type of question that is great for really checking your understanding. So it's great from an examiner's point of view, but it can drive you crazy. So let's break this down. What you're going to have is you're going to have a situation to put in front of you, and it might be this one happens to be about learning preferences and learning styles, but whatever the subject is, you've got the situation, and you go back and think, right, I know what it is it's talking about. And then what you have to do is, if you look at an assertion statement, it's probably going to give you an example, potentially from the scenario, of what the subject's all about. And you have to look at that statement and you go, do I agree with that? So it's true, false. You've done that question already. It's just that we've bundled these statements together in a slightly different format. That's all that we've got with assertion reason. So you go down through each of the assertions and you sort of say, is that true? Do I agree with that? Have I heard that somewhere on the course? Have I read that somewhere in my handbook? Have I seen it somewhere on the slides? Did my trainer say that to me? So just making sure that you think, yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, you've got a couple of choices. What you can do is you can either go through each of the assertions and working out if they're true or false, and then do the same for the reasons. Because the reasons are slightly different, because instead of being based on the scenario, the reasons tend to be pure theory. So they are definitely something that would have come out of your textbook or come off the slides or been explained to you by your trainer. So some people like to go down through the assertion statements first and work out if they're true or false, and then go down through the reason statements. And some people like to go across. Yeah. Whatever happens, what you're trying to do is you're trying to work out if they are true or false. And then there's the second part that you have to do, which is this one. You have to allocate the answers. So let's take an example. If along line 1, the assertion is true, but the reason is false. If you look at this table, you can look down and you go, assertion is true, true, true. So it's either A, B, or C. And then the reason is false. So it can't be A, it can't be B. Oh, the answer is C. So that's how you use this little table. There's also something here you can see that options A and B look exactly the same, but there is a difference. If the assertion and the reason are both true, but in reading it, you can see that the reason explains the assertion. In other words, is it talking about exactly the same subject matter? Is it actually giving you a reason why the assertion is true? Then you would pick answer A. If, however, both statements are true, but perhaps the reason is talking about something different to the assertion, so it's still a true statement, but it's off on a different subject completely, then they are still both true, but in this case you would pick answer B because the reason does not explain the assertion. And that's all there is to it, to both the foundation and these practitioner style exams. I hope you found this useful. We want you to pass your exams. We want you to demonstrate your knowledge. I hope you find that this explanation of how the questions are constructed and what it is that we're looking for gives you confidence that you can actually demonstrate your knowledge and that you can take these exams and share your success, because you are going to be passing first time. Good luck with all of your studying.